Hey guys, Karen here. Apologize for my voice. It sounds a little bit weird. I was a little bit under the weather for the last couple days, but I thought this was a great video to sit down and share with you guys how I plan for my seed starting, which is going to start here in January, and start them inside and then slowly harden them off and move them out into the garden spaces. So I thought I would share with you guys what I do, how I go about it, how I organize, and all the things. So let's jump right in and get started. So the first thing is that I kind of organize my seeds based on their date that they need to be the date that they need to be started, or how many weeks in advance. So the first thing you're going to need to figure out is your last frost date for your zone. So what you can do is you just go into Google and you search last frost date for your zip code. And then usually Google will pull out which zone you're in. We're in zone 6A. I just go off zone 6 because it just gives me windows of if the frost is later or earlier or whatever. It gives me a good middle. So ours is May 1st, is the first day that there shouldn't be any frost anymore. But sometimes we have frost a little bit later into May. It can happen. You just have to watch the weather when you're that close to that date, and just be aware of making sure that you're checking the weather so that no lows happen. And if they do, just make sure you have supplies and things to be able to cover your transplants. So after you have that date, you want to go through your seed packets, and on the back it should tell you how many weeks before your last frost date that these should be started indoors. Now, a lot of seed packets, which I'll put some on the screen, like Botanical Interest has a start inside and start outside like choice, and then they always usually have a option which they recommend. So like peas is something you're not going to start inside. That is something you're going to direct sow. So like it's going to tell you the difference between things like that, especially for your zone. Peas like to be started outside and have the cold temperatures before it starts getting really warm. And then like tomatoes is something that I'm going to start inside. And so those need a specific amount of weeks before that last frost date to be growing inside, and for me to harden them off before they actually go into the garden. So that's the first thing you're going to do. So you want to get your last frost date, and then check on your seed packets to see how much time they need inside, whether they need to be started inside or direct sown. And then I organize those in categories based on what each one needs. And then after I'm done with that, I go through and I group them together as best as I can. Sometimes I start things maybe a little bit like a week later or a week earlier than it actually says, because I have a group of other things, and it's just nice to be able to do them all together. Now, if you don't have a lot of space to start seeds inside, what I would recommend doing is kind of staggering them more, because then as you harden off something, you might be able to use that seed tray for something else. So that allows you, like onions is something that I'm going to be starting here really soon in January, and that's something that's going to be planted outside before May 1st. So that seed tray can go to something that's going to be started later, like peppers or tomatoes or things like that. So that's just something that you can be aware of. You can stagger them and figure out which, items that can be started earlier so that you have seed trays and space to start the rest of them. So just be aware of that, and also grow things together in your seed trays that are going to need to be transplanted out at the same time, because you can't harden off something that's still in your seed trays that is not ready for the colder temperatures. Like onions, I would not be able to plant onions in the same seed tray as like peppers or anything like that, which I'm not going to because I'm starting them way earlier. But just be aware of that even when they get close together. Things that are very frost tender, do not put those in the same seed trays as maybe something that can handle it, like your cabbages and your broccoli and stuff like that. So just be aware of that. I like to write, so I just write everything down. I have a planner that I go through and I write, when I'm going to start each seed and grouping them together. And then when I'm going to start hardening them off, then you need seed trays. So what I use is from Bootstrap Farmer, and I'll actually put a picture on the screen of what I used. I'm really excited. This is the first year that I'm going to be using them, so I'm not like recommending them or anything. It's just something that I'm using this year. So you just have to decide for yourself what you want to start with. I'm really excited for these because a lot of people have had really good reviews about these trays. Each tray has a bottom water tray, so it doesn't have any holes in it. And then I have little pots that are individual that are going to sit in these trays. So the nice thing is I don't have to up pot them as much as I would if I started them in, you know, like the basic seed starting trays that you can get that are one solid piece and they have like a certain amount of squares per tray. I did use those last year. They worked fine. There are certain things though that I should have up potted and I didn't, and it just like, it didn't harm the plant. It just didn't give me the harvest as soon as normally they should be. So just be aware when you use the smaller sized seed trays that some plants are going to need to be up potted as they grow inside. So just be aware of that. Make sure you have the supplies for it. And if you don't want to do that step, just go for a bigger container like what I'm doing this year, which eliminates having to up pot them. You need your seeds, you need your containers, and then you need a good seed starting mix. So seed starting mix is different than potting soil or garden soil or anything like that. It's a lot loftier, which allows the roots of the seed to be able to get down to the bottom of the pot and absorb the water from underneath. And I'll explain a little bit about why I bottom water. But you want to make sure it's a seed starting mix. Some seed starting mixes have fertilizer in them, some do not. So make sure you know which one you have. And if you're buying one that doesn't have any fertilizer in it, you're going to need to supplement that after they've grown on for at least after a week or, you know, maybe a week and a half. They're going to need to start getting nutrients because as that plant grows, it needs a lot of nutrition to really put on healthy growth. So just make sure when you're picking your seed starting mix, either pick one with fertilizer, or if you don't have fertilizer in it, make sure you're getting something to supplement that. And then you're going to need a rack or something to put your seed trays on inside. And then you're going to need like overhang above each rack to put your lights on. So these can vary in sizes, in price, in just a lot of things. I actually have black, I got them off of Amazon, that I'm going to be using, and they're metal. So if you get the lights that stick up on metal, that is really easy because you can just stick it on the top. Any kind of racks that allow airflow that aren't too close together, because you're going to need to allow space for those plants to be growing inside, and then space for the lights to be above the plants. So you're going to need some sort of shelving. And then your lights. When you're doing seed starting, because these plants are going to be moved outside for the remainder of their lifespan, you don't need to buy full spectrum grow lights. It's just going to cost you more money. It's not necessary because these plants are going to be moving outside and then they're going to get the sun and get that full spectrum light. Now, if you have them already, absolutely use them. It's not like it's going to hurt the plants to have that, but you can just buy fluorescent shop lights, like something that's cheap and affordable to start with. I ordered mine off of Amazon. I got a pack of 4, which I'm going to need to order more because I have a lot more seeds that I'm going to be starting this year. But you need to have light for them. I'll also, there's a lot of say about what kind of light, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's not lumen. I think it's with a K. But anyways, I'll like put that in the description as well. There are certain lights, like as far as how much light they're getting, and like daylight, like warmer, cooler lights that help promote growth better than maybe other ones do. So I'll put that in the description below. So when you get your seed starting trays, you want to make sure that for the germination part that you have a dome, like a humidity dome, that goes over top, and a lot of seed trays are sold with a dome that comes with it. So a lot of the packs that you might have to buy come with that humidity dome. It's just to keep the soil moist, the seed moist until they germinate, and then you can take it off. You want to make sure that they're covered with something because you need to keep that soil moist so that the seed can germinate. And then once it's up, then you want to make sure it's under a light, and then you can do top watering still if you want to, or you can bottom water and let the soil soak up the water to where the roots are for that plant. So you want to make sure you have a humidity dome. Some people have used like clear wrap or something to put on top of them. Some people have used totes just to set on top of maybe multiple trays. Just something that's going to make sure to keep those moist throughout their growing time. I always bottom water because it keeps the plant sending roots downward, which makes for a stronger root system. And also it's just a lot cleaner, like you're not having to spray on top of the foliage. And then if your water has hard water in it, or you know, if you're dealing with softener salt or something like that, then you don't have all of that stuff on your foliage of your plants. And so it just keeps it cleaner, but you do want to make sure that you're making sure that there's not algae or whatever on top because the soil's staying moist. So a lot of people use vermiculite and just sprinkle over the top so that it keeps like any algae and stuff forming or whatever on top of the soil in the seed trays. That's basically it. I plan for when I need to transplant them, like I was saying, so then I plan when I need to start hardening them off. And then hardening off a plant, because they're grown inside, they're not used to the direct sunlight of the sun, you have to harden your plants off, because if you put them outside directly in the sun without doing this, they will shrivel up and die. Some plants will recover from it, but it's not something you want to do because you can kill an entire thing of plants, and you don't want that because you spent all this time starting them and you want to see them grow in your garden. So hardening off is moving them outside in the morning for a little bit of time, and then bringing them inside, and then maybe moving them outside in the evening for a little bit of time. This allows you to add more time each day, add more sunlight to each day, and let them experience like wind and just everything that is going to be in the environment outside. This allows your plants to take on the full sun when they're actually out in the garden. So make sure you do not skip this step when you're starting seeds inside, because you are going to lose a lot of your seeds or your plants from just the scorch of the sun. So you want to make sure that you account for that. So about a week before you want to transplant them, you want to start moving them outside. And granted, you have to be aware of the temperatures and stuff like that. So you can move them outside, you know, when the sun is warmer, just for less time, or maybe in the evening when it's not as cold, or just different things like that. So just be aware of temperature, be aware of where you're putting them. You want to put them in a protected place when you first start that doesn't have a lot of wind, just different things like that. Just make sure that you're hardening them off well, and then you can transplant them. You can put them out in the garden and watch them grow. But another thing you want to have, if you can, when you're starting seeds inside, is some type of airflow. So I just have a tower fan when I do this, and I turn that on and I let that move the air around, and it just keeps everything clean. It doesn't let mold grow in the plants or anything like that, because they're, you know, getting enough airflow throughout their growing life. Like I said, we'll just list them again. You need your seeds, you need your trays, you need your seed starting mix, you need shelving, you need lights, and then of course make sure you label all of your seeds when you start them in your trays, because you will have no idea what they are unless you're an amazing plant identifier. And yeah, once they get bigger you can know what they are, but then you can take that label and you can put it in the garden and you know exactly what your variety is. If you save seeds, then later in the season you can label them properly, and just a lot of things. Labeling just makes it easier. For me, it's a must because I am slightly OCD, so it just makes it clean, organized, and I know exactly what each plant is, how much nutrition it needs, and stuff like that. So make sure you're labeling your seeds. And then, oh, one thing I did forget to say is some seeds benefit from bottom heat, heat mats. which you can get really inexpensively from different places. And they just come in rolls, and then you plug them in, and it helps keep the plant soil warm as it grows. Some plants prefer this, especially like peppers. They just like warm soil. So if you need something like that, it usually says that on the back of the packet. You can also just like search, you know, plants that prefer warm soil when seed starting to see which ones. It is not necessary. It just makes it easier for them to germinate, and you don't have to wait as long. So that's another thing. And then, so you're shelving, you're lighting, and then if you need fertilizer, make sure you have that. And then bigger pots if you're going to start in trays, and to have to up pot. So just be aware of that as well. I hope this helped you guys. I hope this inspires you to start seeds inside. Even just like, I mean, a lot of people have used red solo cups and started seeds like that and put them on a windowsill. You can do it however you want to. Just grab some seeds and try to grow something to put out into your garden. It just makes it so much more fulfilling knowing that you started this from the seed and you get to watch it grow in your garden. If you guys have questions, let me know. Also share things that you maybe have done that made seed starting easier. I always love to grow in just the knowledge of it all and just learning how other people do things too. But I'm excited for this next year. I cannot wait. And like I said, my first seed starting is going to be onions, and I'm starting them a lot earlier than I did last year because my onion bulbs weren't as big as I had hoped for them to be. They were still really, really good, but I'm going to be starting them earlier this year. So I bless you guys in this next growing season, and I hope you guys do well and just experiment and get your hands in some soil and just have fun growing new things. But I will see you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. And if you liked it, thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and watch our journey as we go along. Bye, guys.